We've all had that person who lingers in our mind long after they're gone. You replay conversations, you scroll through memories, and a part of you keeps asking, what if? But here's the truth: every time you do that, you give them power they no longer deserve. Forgetting isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about refusing to let it control your present. Today, I'm going to show you how to erase him, not with bitterness, but with clarity, dignity, and the kind of strength that makes you unstoppable. Your mind is not a museum, and yet most of us treat our memories like they are sacred pieces of art that must be preserved, revisited, and admired, even when they hurt us. Think about how often you catch yourself replaying conversations you had with him, going over the same words, the same jokes, the same looks across a room. Every time you do that, you are giving him space inside your head, as if his presence is worth curating. But here's the thing: he's not a masterpiece, he's just part of your past. And the past doesn't need to be worshipped, it needs to be released. When you go to a museum, you stand in front of a painting and you give it all your attention. You analyze the brushstrokes, the details, the story behind it. That's what you've been doing with him. You're analyzing the relationship like it's some priceless artifact, trying to find new meaning in every detail. But the truth is, no amount of studying the painting will change what's on the canvas. It's already finished. The brush is down, the story is done, and yet we keep staring, hoping that if we look at it just one more time, we'll discover something that will give us closure. The problem with treating him like a museum piece is that it makes him timeless in your life. It freezes him in place, keeps him relevant, and tricks you into believing he deserves to be remembered forever. But he doesn't. People who truly matter, who contribute to your growth, who stand by you when things are hard, they're the ones who deserve a permanent exhibit in your mind. Not someone who couldn't choose you, who couldn't respect you, or who couldn't see your value. By placing him in that mental museum, you elevate him to a level of importance he hasn't earned. And let's be honest, most of the time we don't even remember the reality. We remember a romanticized version. In museums, the art is polished, well lit, and displayed in its best condition. We don't see the cracks or the dust. We see it the way the curator wants us to. That's what happens when you hold on to him. You don't remember the arguments, the neglect, the way he made you feel small. You remember the moments that sparkle, the moments that keep you hooked. Your brain becomes the curator, choosing the flattering memories and hiding the rest. And then you wonder why you can't move on. If you want to forget him like he never existed, you have to close the museum. Stop being the curator of his memory. That means not indulging in old messages, not replaying old dates, not revisiting places just to feel what you used to feel. It means catching yourself when your mind drifts back and saying, no, that gallery is closed. It takes discipline, yes, but what's at stake is your peace, your energy, and your future. Imagine what would happen if you stopped staring at that old painting and turned around. Behind you, there's a blank canvas waiting. That's your life right now, open, fresh, ready for new colors and new strokes. But as long as you're fixated on the museum of him, you can't pick up the brush for yourself. You're too busy being a spectator of a story that's already ended. Your mind is not a place for old artifacts, it's a place for creation. Forgetting him doesn't mean erasing your history, it means refusing to immortalize someone who doesn't deserve that kind of permanence. It's about reclaiming your mental space for what actually matters, for the people who are here, for the goals you want to achieve, for the love you haven't even met yet. Because the moment you decide that your head is not a museum, you free yourself from the endless tour of what was, and step into the thrilling uncertainty of what could be. Detox your triggers, that's where real forgetting begins, because the truth is, it's not him you're missing, it's the constant reminders of him that keep dragging you back. A song comes on, and suddenly you're back in his car with the windows down. You walk into that cafe, and the chair by the corner table feels like it's holding his ghost. You scroll Instagram, and there he is, smiling in a picture, living his life, and without realizing it, your entire mood spirals. Triggers are sneaky like that. They disguise themselves as harmless, everyday moments, but each one is like reopening a wound that was just starting to heal. The reason triggers are so powerful is because your brain builds associations. It wires memories to moments, places, and objects. That's why certain scents or songs feel so loaded. They don't carry magic on their own. It's what your brain attached to them. And here's the part most people get wrong. You can't heal by constantly exposing yourself to these triggers, thinking you'll eventually get numb. That's like standing in the rain hoping not to get wet. Healing isn't about endurance, it's about strategy. And the strategy is to detox. Detox means clearing out anything that doesn't serve your recovery. If that playlist is filled with songs that sting, make a new one. If that cafe feels heavy, try a different spot, even if it's just for a while. If social media is a minefield, mute him, unfollow him, or better yet, delete the app until you've regained your strength. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. People confuse strength with exposure, but real strength is knowing what protects your peace and choosing that over pride. Think about it this way. If you were trying to quit sugar, you wouldn't stock your kitchen with cookies and tell yourself, "I'll just resist." You'd remove the temptation because you know you're human and discipline has limits. It's the same with emotional triggers. If you know the song, the place, the scroll will undo your progress. Why keep it in your environment? Detoxing is not about pretending your past didn't happen. It's about creating space where your past can't keep ambushing your present. At first, this will feel uncomfortable, almost unnatural. You'll catch yourself reaching for the trigger out of habit, like touching a bruise just to see if it still hurts. That's normal, but with time, as you fill those spaces with new experiences, new routines, and new associations, the old triggers lose their grip. That song that once felt like a knife in your chest becomes just another track. That cafe becomes just another coffee shop. And eventually you walk in and it doesn't even cross your mind to connect it to him. That's the power of detox. It rewires your brain through substitution, not through suffering. Here's the part people underestimate. Triggers are not just external, they are internal too. Sometimes the biggest trigger is your own thought pattern. The what ifs, the maybe he'll come back, the was I not enough. Those are mental triggers, and they can be even more dangerous than a song or a place. Detoxing from these means interrupting them. When the thought starts, you catch it, you redirect it, you remind yourself that replaying those questions doesn't serve you. It's not about fighting the thought harder. It's about starving it of attention until it no longer thrives. The beauty of detoxing your triggers is that it accelerates your freedom. Without the constant pull of reminders, you get to experience what life feels like without him hovering over every corner. In that space, that's where you rediscover yourself. That's where joy sneaks back in quietly at first, then louder. That's where new connections can enter without being shadowed by old ghosts. You don't forget him by willpower alone. You forget him by design. You curate your environment in a way that protects you, supports you, and nurtures the person you're becoming. Because healing isn't passive, it's active. It's not just time passing. It's the choices you make every single day to free yourself from the chains of the past. And when you detox your triggers, you're not just removing him, you're reclaiming your world, one memory at a time. The shift from why me to what's next is one of the most powerful moves you can make after heartbreak. When someone leaves, when someone chooses not to show up for you the way you deserved, it's natural to obsess over the question, why me? Why wasn't I enough? Why did he leave me and not her? Why did he say all those things and then walk away? The mind craves answers because answers feel like control. If you can just solve the riddle, maybe the pain will make sense. But the problem is, why me, is a black hole. No matter how many times you ask, no matter how many theories you come up with, it never spits out an answer that truly sets you free. It only pulls you deeper into self. Doubt and resentment, why me, keeps you stuck in the past. It keeps you circling the same story over and over again, as though there's a hidden chapter you somehow missed. But the story is finished. He made his choice, and even if you did find out the exact reason why he left, would it change the outcome? Would it make you feel lighter, or would it only give you another excuse to turn the knife on yourself? The truth is, the why doesn't heal you, it haunts you. That's why you have to pivot. The question you should be asking isn't why me, but what's next? That's the question that pulls you out of the past and into the future. What's next is a forward-moving question. It says, okay, that chapter ended. So where do I go from here? What do I want to build now? What kind of life do I want to design that makes this pain worthwhile? It's not about minimizing your hurt. It's about deciding that your hurt won't be the place you live forever. Think about the difference in energy between the two. Why me is passive. It's waiting for someone else to give you clarity. It's standing in the ruins of the relationship, scanning for clues. What's next is active. It puts the power back in your hands. It acknowledges that even if you can't control what he did, you can absolutely control how you respond. And that shift from powerless to powerful is the turning point of healing. When you start asking what's next, you begin to see opportunities that were invisible before. You realize you have time again, energy again, freedom again. You get to rediscover passions you put on hold, friendships you neglected, goals you kept saying you'd get around to. Suddenly, the focus isn't on what you lost, but on what you still have and what you can create. That shift in perspective is everything. Because forgetting someone isn't about erasing your memory. It's about building a future so exciting that the past naturally fades. And here's something else. When you dwell on why me, you place your value in his hands. You let his choice define your worth. But when you focus on what's next, you reclaim that definition. You say, my worth isn't tied to who walked away. My worth is tied to who I choose to become after they left. That's where real confidence is born, not in being chosen, but in choosing yourself. What's next doesn't just heal, it transforms. Because every time you redirect your focus, you're strengthening a muscle, the muscle of resilience, the muscle of forward thinking, and the stronger that muscle gets, the less power the past has over you. Eventually, the question why me stops showing up at all, because you're too busy living the answer to what's next. The irony is that the moment you stop demanding reasons and start creating possibilities, life gives you a sense of peace you couldn't find before. You stop needing his explanation because you've written your own. You stop needing closure from him because you've given it to yourself. And that's the moment you truly begin to forget him, not because you erased the past, but because you built a future that made the past irrelevant. If you want to erase someone from your life, you can't just remove them. You have to replace them. Because here's the mistake most people make when they're trying to move on. They cut someone out, but they don't fill the space that's left behind. And when there's emptiness, the mind will always try to fill it with the past. It's like deleting a file from your computer, but leaving the folder empty sooner or later. You're going to keep looking inside, wondering what used to be there. That's why people relapse into old memories, old messages, or even old relationships. The absence creates a vacuum, and the past rushes back in to fill it. When you only focus on removing him, his photos, his texts, his presence, you create an empty space in your day, in your thoughts, in your identity. And that emptiness feels uncomfortable. You used to wake up to his messages, now you wake up to silence. You used to spend evenings talking to him, Now you're left staring at your phone. That sudden gap can feel unbearable, so your brain does the easiest thing it knows. It reaches back for what's familiar. That's why forgetting feels so hard, not because you miss him, but because you haven't built anything new to take his place. The solution isn't just subtraction, it's substitution. Instead of removing and leaving a void, you replace with intention. You take that time, that energy, that space in your head, and you invest it somewhere else. Maybe you start a morning ritual that nourishes you instead of scrolling through his social media. Maybe you join a class or a group that introduces you to new people and new conversations. Maybe you pick up a passion you abandoned while you were wrapped up in him. The point is, you don't just cut him out, you upgrade your life in the process. And the beautiful thing about replacement is that it doesn't just distract you, it reshapes you. When you fill your world with new habits, new people, and new routines, you start to form new associations. That cafe that once reminded you of him, now it reminds you of the book you read there on your own. That evening slot that used to be spent waiting for his call, now it's the time you dedicate to working out, journaling, or building your dreams. The trigger that used to pull you backward gets overwritten by new meaning. That's how healing really works, not by erasing the past, but by layering it with something better. Replacement also reminds you that you are not defined by who you lost, but by what you choose. When you only remove, you're still letting him dictate the narrative. He leaves and suddenly there's nothing. But when you replace, you take back authorship. You're no longer living in reaction to his absence, you're creating your presence. You're saying, this space doesn't belong to him anymore, it belongs to me. That's not just healing, that's empowerment. Of course, there will be moments when the temptation to revisit the past comes back. That's normal. But the difference is, now you'll have something to turn to. Instead of staring into an empty void, you'll have rituals, projects, friendships, and passions that are alive in your world right now. Those become the anchors that keep you grounded in the present instead of drifting back into memories. The real power of replacement is that it transforms the process of forgetting from something painful into something exciting. You're not just losing, you're gaining, you're not just erasing, you're rewriting. Each new choice, each new ritual, each new experience is like painting over an old canvas, not with the intention of hiding what was there, but with the determination to create something that reflects who you are now. That's why moving on isn't just about letting go, it's about what you pick up in its place. You don't just forget him by cutting ties, you forget him because your life becomes so full, so rich, so forward, focused that the thought of him feels out of place. The more you replace, the less room there is for him to return. And that's when forgetting stops being a struggle and starts being a natural byproduct of the life you're busy building. He wasn't the one. He was just someone who happened. That's a truth many people resist, because when you've invested your time, your love, and your vulnerability into someone, it feels easier to elevate them into a once-in-a-lifetime figure than to. Except they were simply part of your journey, but that elevation is exactly what keeps you stuck. The moment you believe someone was the one, you give their absence more power than it deserves. You tell yourself that because they're gone, nothing else will ever measure up, and suddenly your identity is tied to someone who isn't even there anymore. Forgetting him starts with redefining what he meant. He wasn't your destiny, he was a chapter. He wasn't the source of your worth. He was just a mirror reflecting where you were at that time in your life. And like every mirror, it didn't always show the truth. Sometimes it showed your insecurities, sometimes it showed your longing, and sometimes it showed the parts of yourself you wanted to believe in. But none of that makes him your definition. It makes him an experience, not your identity. The danger of attachment is that it fuses who you are with who they were. You begin to see yourself through the lens of their choices. If he stayed, you must be lovable. If he left, you must be lacking. That's a fragile way to live because it puts your sense of value in someone else's hands. But here's the reality: your worth existed before he arrived, and it will exist long after he's gone. He didn't create your wholeness. You were whole from the very beginning. All he did was enter the picture for a while and then exit. The problem isn't that he left. It's that you convinced yourself he took something essential with him. Identity over attachment means choosing to ground yourself not in who you lost, but in who you are. It's reminding yourself that you are more than the relationship, more than the heartbreak, more than the memories. It's about shifting the focus from "he defined my story" to "I define my story," because when you truly embody that, forgetting him stops being a battle. You stop measuring your value against his absence, and you start measuring it against your own growth, your own choices, your own standards. Think about it. When you were younger, there were people you thought you couldn't live without. People who felt like everything at the time. And now, you barely think of them, not because they weren't real, but because your identity grew beyond them. That's what will happen here too. The moment you decide that your wholeness doesn't hinge on him, the moment you choose to see yourself as bigger than the relationship, his memory will naturally shrink. It's not about denying the connection you had, it's about refusing to idolize it. He wasn't the only one who could make you laugh. He wasn't the only one who could hold you. He wasn't the only one who could understand parts of you. To believe that is to limit your entire future to one person who couldn't even stay, and you deserve so much more than that kind of limitation. So, erase him by reclaiming your identity. Every time the thought of him creeps in, remind yourself, "I was whole before him. I am whole now. I will be whole forever." That mantra isn't just words. It's the truth. And the more you live it, the more you realize that the one you've been searching for was never out there. It was always you. When you grasp that, forgetting him isn't forced, it's freedom, because he was never the one. The one has always been the person you see in the mirror. Forgetting him isn't about revenge. It's not about making him regret, or hoping he wakes up one day and realizes what he lost. That kind of thinking still gives him a starring role in your story. It keeps him at the center, even when you've already moved on in every practical way. The real power isn't in proving him wrong or making him miss you. It's in becoming so indifferent that his existence no longer registers. That's where true freedom is found, when his name doesn't stir emotion, when his memory doesn't pull at you, when you can pass by the places you once shared and feel nothing more than calm. At first, that sounds impossible, because heartbreak fills your mind with constant what-ifs and images of him. You imagine scenarios where he sees you thriving, scenarios where he comes back apologizing, scenarios where you finally get the closure you wanted. All of those fantasies are disguised attachments. They keep him alive in your mind long after he's gone. But peace doesn't arrive through his recognition, it arrives through your detachment. When you stop making it about him, you take back your power. Revenge feeds the ego, but peace feeds the soul. Revenge says, "I'll show you." Peace says, "I don't need to show you anything." Revenge is noisy, it's dramatic, it's still tethered to him. Peace is quiet, steady, and rooted in yourself. Which one do you think actually heals you? The irony is that indifference is the most powerful statement you'll ever make without having to say a word. Because when you truly forget him, when you erase the space he once occupied in your mind, he no longer owns any part of you. That's when you stop checking if he noticed, you stop wondering if he cares, and you stop keeping score because you've realized the score doesn't matter when the game is over. Peace is power because it's self-sufficient. It doesn't rely on external validation, it doesn't hinge on someone else's actions, and it doesn't wait for apologies that may never come. Peace comes when you decide that your mental real estate is too valuable to rent out to someone who didn't respect it. Every thought you give him is a piece of land he doesn't deserve, so you evict him, you clear the space, and you invite in joy, self-respect, ambition, and love that is worthy of you. Of course, peace doesn't arrive overnight. Indifference is not about pretending you don't care, it's about reaching a place where you genuinely don't. That takes practice. It's choosing not to engage in the little temptations, checking his page, stalking his new relationship, comparing yourself to whoever came next. Every time you refuse those impulses, you strengthen your detachment, and one day, without even noticing, you realize you haven't thought about him in weeks. That's not because you forced it. It's because you built a life so rich, so engaging, so present, that he simply faded out of relevance. The sweetest part of peace is that it gives you your energy back. All those late night thoughts, all that emotional back and forth, all that mental real estate, it's suddenly available for you. You can pour it into your goals, your friendships, your passions. You can use it to rebuild your confidence, your standards, your sense of self. And the more you do that, the less room there is for him. So forget revenge, forget proving yourself. Forget waiting for him to regret. Those are chains disguised as victories. The only true victory is peace, the kind of peace that makes you look back one day and wonder why you ever gave him so much of your attention in the first place. That's the kind of erasure that lasts. That's the kind of forgetting that sets you free. At the end of the day, forgetting him isn't about pretending he never existed. It's about making sure he no longer controls the way you exist. You don't heal by clinging to the past. You heal by reclaiming your future. You don't move on by asking why he left. You move on by deciding what's next. You don't erase him by leaving an empty space. You erase him by filling your life so completely that he no longer fits. And when you finally stop tying your identity to someone who couldn't stay, you realize you were always whole, always worthy, always enough. The greatest form of closure isn't his apology, it's your peace. The most powerful form of erasure isn't revenge. It's indifference. And the most beautiful part of all is that when you forget him like he never existed, you remember yourself like you've always mattered.